you very much. So, as mentioned, I'm Henrik Blou. I'm the CEO, and also today here I have Christian Worbers, our CFO. We were delighted to present Gubra to you. So please switch to the next slide. And it's the disclaimer. Gubra was listed earlier this year, so please proceed to the next slide. As mentioned, we were listed on the main market in Copenhagen in March of this year. Gubra has a hybrid business model. So we are a service company. We do services to the pharma and biotech industry, research services, where we are experts in metabolic diseases. An example could be if a company is developing a tablet against obesity and they have a version A and a version B. Our research can help determine which one is the better. How many times a day should you take this tablet, or what should the dosage be? That's the kind of research services that we deliver. The other arm of the business, that is our discovery and partnerships. This is where it's our own idea, our own internal research. We mature this to the right level. Could also be a treatment for obesity as an example. And then when it has been matured to the right level, we partner it with biotech or pharma companies. So Gubra is a growing company. Right now, we are approximately 210 employees. We are located north of Copenhagen, and we have more than half of our revenue from customers in the United States. And this is when we talk the service business of Gubra. We are servicing 15 out of top 20 pharma companies in the world. So we have a very strong customer base, and 15 has been or are customers of Gubra. So quite a strong partner or customer base that we have. Please jump to the next slide, where I will shed a little bit more light on our historic growth. You can see Gubra, ever since it was incepted late 2008, we have been growing. The pink part of these columns are revenue from the CRO services, and the dark blue part are from the discovery and partnerships. So we have a strategy of partnering our pipeline programs relatively early. We'd rather build a long list of partnerships rather than being very exposed to the success of one or two assets. So that's the strategy of Gubra. And combined with the service business, it's quite unique and quite different from many biotech companies. And we actually see ourselves as a service company with some biotech potential on top. Please jump to the next slide, where we show you that this year has been a very good year for Gubra. We IPO'd in March, and we then predicted a growth in the service business of 10% for the full year. But actually, we've seen a much stronger growth trend in the service business. We've been growing 28% the first 9 months compared to the same period in 22. And if we look at Q3 alone, we grew the service business by 44%. This also means that we have raised our outlook for the full year several times already. In the discovery and partnership arm of the business, we've also seen some nice developments. We have made a new partnership with a biotech company called Hemab, that's within bleeding disorders. We have regained full control of a pipeline asset that was partnered with Bayer, and that partnership were regarding cardiorenal aspects of this drug candidate. However, we did see some data more supporting management of healthy weight loss. hence it was actually nice to get it back and be able to redirect it into healthy weight loss. Also, we have taken our own internal amylin program, that's an anti-obesity agent, into clinical trial. And this slide, it says expected end of 2023, but actually last week we had a press release where we told the market that the first patient has been dosed and the phase 1 trial is now ongoing. Apart from all this, we've also opened an office in Boston in the United States in order to be even closer to all our US customers. And if you go to the next slide, we're describing a little more of what we are actually doing. So I mentioned we were experts with regards to metabolic diseases. So we're a specialty CRO. We have a niche focus, and we've been working for many years on diabetes and obesity and related disorders. So if you are obese, you tend to get comorbidities such as this disease in the liver called MASH. It used to be called NASH, changed its name to MASH, but also it can affect the kidneys, it can affect the heart, and it can affect the intestines, and so on. And we are specialized in these disease areas, and this is also where we deliver services. And the strong growth that we've seen this year is actually based on several of these disease areas performing very nicely. So going back 5 years or so, Gubra was very depending on NASH as a disease area. But now we see very nice growth in NASH this year, but also in obesity, in the kidney space, and in the lung part of the lung space called IPF. So really a broadly distributed growth that we have been experiencing. And if you jump to the next slide, this is where we look into the customer base of Gubra. So on this slide, we are showing the top 20 pharma companies in the world. And as mentioned in the beginning, 15 of these either are or have been clients of Gubra. And several of these very long-standing clients, some for more than a decade. And you may see on this graph, although it may not present so clearly on the screen, that we have a growing customer base. Last year, 101 individual customers, 67 of these were recurring clients, and 34 were new clients. And this year, again, we see a growth in the customer base. So also in that regards, a positive development. And actually this year, we've seen especially nice growth when it comes to biotech customers in the US. So the funding drought that some biotech companies are experiencing, that is not something that we see among our customers. We've actually seen nice growth this year of requests coming our way for services. And if you go to the next slide, this is where Christian will dive a little bit into some of the financial stuff.
Very good. And this is our service business, this CRO business. And, we said when we started out the year, and as we also said in the IPO, we expect to grow this service business by 10% in the organic revenue. And I think we've been, very pleased with now to say that we're up in the 28% area for the first 9 months, and we guide for roughly the same growth for the full year. So we really delivered in this area, and even more than that we promised in the IPO. And the areas that have been growing quite fast is the liver space and the obesity. I think everyone talks about obesity now, and Gubra has a very central position within this area to service our customers. And we've been working with obesity since the company was formed in 2008. So that's a stronghold in the company. And we can feel that in our figures this year as well. And then the somewhat newer fields in Gubra, the kidney and the lung space, the IPF, it's also quite comforting that we build out these areas, and we can see that it's also taking off and shown in our figures. So over and above a very good year this year, and especially when you do an IPO, you really want to deliver on what you promised, and we're doing that and a little bit more, and in particular in the US, where we see this strong growth, and we also open an office there, so it fits very nicely. And this growth has also been profitable growth, so we're growing earnings roughly at the same magnitude as the revenue part. So all in all, very good development in Gubra this year.
Thank you, Christian. And on the next slide, we are diving into the discovery and partnership arm of the business. So we have a platform that we call Streamline, which we use to develop novel peptides as pharmaceutical agents. And the Streamline platform is based on AI, artificial intelligence, which we use to predict and design these peptides. We're working with thousands of variants in wet lab physically, and these clouds of data we use AI to chew through and predict how should we design the next round of peptides. And it's a rather new way of doing it. Historically, you would optimize for only 1 or 2 parameters at a time when you do your peptide development. But because we now have these powerful tools, we can optimize in parallel for a range of characteristics of these peptides. Hence, we can reach a clinical candidate quite a lot faster than what was possible with traditional means. So that's essentially what the Streamline platform can do. And of course, we're using this within metabolic diseases. That's our home turf. But also that has now been acknowledged outside of Gubra. And we did see this partnership earlier this year with HEMAP. They work within bleeding disorders. So that's an area where we do not know so much about the disease. But they do that. They just saw that this peptide platform can be used to develop novel agents which they need for their programs. So a very interesting development, and also something we expect to see going forward, that we can actually do partnerships outside of our core area just for the development of novel peptides. And if we go to the next slide, we are seeing a little bit more of our own pipeline. So the top 5 pipeline assets here are all partnered. The 3 blue ones are partnered with the big German pharma company, Boehringer Ingelheim, one of the top 20 companies in the world. And these are all focused, these 3 partnerships, around obesity. So as you may know, Novo Nordic and Eli Lilly are a strong player in this obesity space, but several other big companies wants to enter this market, and Boehringer Ingelheim being one of these. They're very serious about it, and they have, among other pipeline assets, these 3 collaborations with Gubra. We also have the HEMAP collaboration and a collaboration with Silence Therapeutics. And then we have the green ones here that are pipeline assets, which we will eventually partner. So we have a strategy of making 1 to 2 new partnerships per year. As mentioned initially, our strategy is to partner early, build a long list of potential revenue streams, and flipping these from being cost-bearing internal programs to being partnerships that are healthy businesses for Gubra. And we have quite a long history with partnerships, and as you saw on one of the initial slides, it's also historically formed an important part of our revenue stream. And if we go to the next slide, we dive a little bit into here the amylin assets. I mentioned it initially. We have taken this obesity program based on the amylin biology into clinical trial. Last week, we announced the first patient was dosed. The graph that I have in this slide is based on data made in obese rats. And it shows that if you treat obese rats with a GLP-1 agent, such as the agents that are already on the market, you do see a weight loss. The same is the fact if you dose with amylin, you do see a weight loss. And if you combine an amylin and a GLP-1, you see an additive weight loss. So this is the way we expect, and many others within the obesity space, the development will be going forward. There'll be a combination of various mechanisms in these drugs. Hence, the big players will be looking for these pieces that they can combine in order to produce therapies that gives the desired weight loss. So we're very happy that we recently could bring this into the clinics. And if we go to the next slide, thank you. That's around our Boston office. We've recently opened that. It will be centered around some sales reps that will be involved in selling our CRO services to US customers. We already have a quite large proportion of our business that's of our revenue that's from US customers, but we do see more potential over there. Hence, that's why we now have feet on the ground. And it will not be a huge unit. We foresee something like a handful of people involved, especially around selling CRO services, and also laid out in business development around our partnerships. And on the next slide, there's a third element of Gubra. We have this service arm. We do have the discovery and partnerships, and we also have a strong green commitment. We have a policy that 10% of our profits are channeled into this fully owned subsidiary called Gubra Green, and these funds are invested in green assets. And we are, as an example, looking into a solar power panel site so that we can generate the electricity that we are using here on the site north of Copenhagen ourselves, in order to deliver on a fully carbon neutral goal that we have. So summing up, Christian.
Yes, very good. If we turn to the next slide here, and I think this is a quite nice slide to round off, because we, as we said in the beginning, we set out, to grow 10% in our service business, and we really lived up to that promise, and even more so. So we expect now growth in the area of 25 to 28% in the service business, and that is accompanied with also growing, the profitability in this business also. So we're clearly delivering on what we said when we listed, and even more so. And we also said that we want to make 1 to 2 new partnerships in the discovery and partnership business, and we've made one already this year, and we're constantly, discussing with collaborating partners to conclude even more partnerships. So I think over and above, when you do an IPO, you really want to deliver, and we've clearly made so, and a bit more than that. And so now we're in December, and we conclude that it's been a really good start for Gubra, and we hope to continue so. I think that concludes our presentation, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and it's time for Q&A, and I will start off with, you have had a pretty good growth year on year, but in 2022, both of your business areas dropped quite a bit. Why was that?
So the two business areas have a quite different profile when it comes to revenue. So if I started with the discovery and partnerships, it's driven by these payments within the partnerships, and it's really milestone payments, and it can be quite volatile because it sort of comes in rather big portions. And if it's on one side or the other of the new year, it makes quite a bit of difference there. So there, it's only natural that we see fluctuations year on year, and you have to look added over several years in order to see the full sort of revenue potential there. And it's true that this in 22 there was not there was some, but not as much as the previous year. But the previous year was 21 was extraordinary based on the partnerships we had back then. So we will see these fluctuations, and also going forward, we see a very nice potential for milestones from the current partnerships, and then there will be new partnerships added with even more potential. So looking into the service business, that was the decline from 21 to 22 was based especially on activity in the MASH space. So this liver disease associated with being obese, where liver or fat builds up in the liver. And there have been quite some failures from companies in the clinics in the MASH space. And therefore there was a bit of a wait and see attitude among MASH customers. And late in 22, we saw data coming out of a company called Madrigal, where they were quite good, and that really triggered a surge of interest back into the MASH game, and we've definitely seen that growing this year as well. So I think where Gubra is a bit of a different animal now is that dependency on MASH is not as strong, because we have built out so that we have a mature model as interest there. We are building the IPF models, and we see, even though these are not fully characterized yet, we see very nice uptake from customers. And also within obesity, we sort of experience this phenomenal interest that a lot of companies are showing in going into obesity. So there we see it in the service business. So really we are broader and not as susceptible to changes within one disease area.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions in the audience? Yes, there are. Please go ahead.
Just to get a feel of the potential in the 5 active partnerships. If you were to add up all the theoretical milestones you could get, we all know that that won't happen, but still, what is the added figure?
Yeah, thank you. And I think I will turn to you. That was something we described in the prospectus, and perhaps you.
Yeah, now I'm trying to recall, but I think we had around 5 billion Danish kroner from the partnership that and then the buyer has been terminated. So I think that was a billion that would go out. So that's around 3.5 billion Danish kroner. Then we've added a new one from Hemab where we don't disclose it. So it's somewhere 3.5 billion Danish plus, so to speak, and then on that is royalties and some other, undisclosed milestones. So, but I think one important point to this, I mean, you have these bio dollars, $1 billion that, but we actually get these milestones quite early during the development. So we don't need to wait for the partners to take them on to the market before we get the payback. We actually get it quite early. I think that again differentiates Gubra from some other biotech companies that we actually, and then we also get research payments during the way. So we recoup the investments we've had, and even more so in the very early phase of a partnership. So it's not something that's far away out in the future, and that you can also see on our revenue stream. Also, every single year we've had partnership payments at different sizes, but quite sizable each year since the first partnership in 2013.
Exactly. I can add in here, of course, naturally, milestone tends to be growing as the asset is maturing. So the initial milestones are, of course, smaller than the ones you get when you go into phase 3. But still, these initial milestones, when you add them up, these suffice in order for us to get our investment back from these programs. And then it's pure upside from there. And again, I can only encourage you to look into the exact figures that we have in the prospectus. It may not be the completely exact ones that Christian mentioned here that we do not recall right now, but in the prospectus we have the exact ones, and it is definitely sizable opportunities that we have from the current collaborations.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have some more questions in the audience.
Yes, if you could please elaborate a little bit on the amylin project. So why you're going into the clinic yourself, and how do you see this project differentiate itself from the competition such as Novo Nordic's CagriSema?
Yeah, so I'll be happy to do so. So first, CagriSema, it's more matured. It's in phase 3, and hence it's paving the way for these amylin types of mechanisms. So we do see interest that other companies would like to have an amylin as part of their treatment. That's why. One thing that is known around CagriSema is that it's due to the physical properties, it cannot be mixed with semaglutide. It has to be given at another pH, and making sort of delivery a little more complicated. Our differentiates in the fact that it can be it's soluble at neutral pH, and it can be mixed with most of the GLP-1s that are on the market or being developed right now. So that's one thing. It's easily mixable with other assets. So I think they perform to the same efficacy level. Many of these amylin analogs that are out there, they're not that many, however, and our expectation is, just like with GLP-1s, where several players will have their own GLP-1, several players will need an amylin to add to the mix. So that was the other parts of the question, sorry, that I haven't answered.
I think we are fine there, Henrik, because we are running out of time. But thank you, okay, Henrik and Christian, for participating.